Here's my first attempt at stenciling. This is a really old front patio at my house, and it was just bare cement. So I decided I wanted to dress it up a little bit. I also decided to put a border around it with another stencil in the middle of the border. These colors are on my house, as you see. This lighter color is this smoked trout, and then I used this darker color as the background on this. So this this front porch has a dark background with the lighter color stenciled on top. This one's called Patio from Stencil Lab. Turned out pretty well. It took a long time to do this. It's a really large patio. I decided to do the steps. There's my fountain over there. Here's what the steps turned out like. I was really happy. When it gets a little cooler out, I'm gonna put a clear coat on this for the winter. It'll just preserve it. This is patio paint, patio cement paint, so it should hold up okay, but just to be sure, because it took me so long, I'm going to seal it when it gets a little bit cooler. Now let's go to the back, my next project. People have been asking me, what kind of paint are you using? These are the three products that I'm using on this unsealed, just raw concrete that's been old, it's never been painted. So if you have a surface that's been painted, you're gonna have to get the old paint off first with a paint remover. I didn't have to do that, so I was pretty lucky there. I started with this product. This is from Lowe's, Concrete Bonding Primer. Primes the raw concrete, the unsealed concrete, and creates so it bonds better with the paint. Then I went to the Bear paint. This is Home Depot. This is in a deep base, but it's because it's a dark color. It just depends on what color you get. They can tint this to any color you like. This porch and patio floor paint. Very nice product. And then I will seal it with this, also from Home Depot. Clear seal, low luster. And I'll do that when it's getting a little bit colder out. Right now it's just too hot. So those are the three products I use. I use a roller, a brush, and a small dense foam roller to apply this. Okay, so let me just show you how I do this briefly. I can't video too much and paint, but I can show you a few little tips here. So here's my paint I'm using for the design, and this is my little 6-inch dense foam roller. You can get them anywhere, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, anywhere. And I keep this tray in this big garbage bag because it's really hot here, so if I'm not doing something, I cover it up or it just will tend to dry out on you. So that's why it's inside this garbage sack. And then there's my little paper towels. So I will roll this out, get some paint on it. Okay, then you want to offload it a little bit. This is really just a couple of times. So you see it's sort of dry. Okay, then here I've already started on this stencil. Okay, so let's do this little piece over here, you can see. Okay, so see, not a lot of paint on there. And you'll want to, because it'll go faster if you have more paint. But you'll be sad if you do that, because it will go right underneath this stencil. As you see, it can even move a little bit. You can put adhesive, repositional adhesive on the backs of these, but I just don't, because I don't really think it helps that much. So I'm just really careful. I go really slowly. I'm not pushing really hard. This is, if you can see, this is really rough cement. So this is the hardest thing you'll ever stencil, is this rough cement. And there will be some little places afterwards, you cannot avoid it. But if you just go slow, go slowly. And with the rough cement, sometimes I'll move this direction and look at it again, I'm like, oh, okay. So you see there's still some white showing here from this direction. So I'll kind of do it from a couple different directions. Now you don't have to do this if you're doing this on the wall in the house or something smooth, but this concrete is really rough. So we'll come back and show what this looks like in a minute when it's all finished. When I get this piece painted, then I will immediately take up the stencil, and you do it just in one move. Don't let it drag across it. This is a really big stencil I'm using because it's a big patio. So you just pick up a couple of corners and just pull it straight up as fast as you can. And then I just lay it over here on my towel because it'll have some paint on the back of it. You can't help it. Or if you have somewhere to hang it over a chair or someplace you don't care that gets a little bit of paint, it dries pretty fast, but you need to lay it down as soon as you get it off there. Then, after I do that, I have these handy dandy little pens. These are little touch-up pens. I have one of the background color and one of the stencil color that I'm using. You fill these up and you can see they have a little brush on the end. Very nice. And you just twirl it up like makeup. Okay, you just twirl it up and it comes out. So I put these in my pocket because all these little connections down here, there will have to be some, you know, finishing some of the little messes that you make along the way. I just do each one as I go because if you don't, you're gonna look at the whole thing at the end and be blind trying to find them, and it'll just be overwhelming. So I just take about 10 minutes when I pull this up, let it dry for maybe 5 minutes, and then I just go around and look, you know, if there's any little smudges or anything like that, and then go on to the next one. Okay, I'll be back for another video soon. Hi everyone, it's Kay, I'm back. Let's go paint. Everyone was asking me, what are you doing in that tent? Well, this is my solution to, there's no shade on the west side of this house. As you see, there's no trees, so I don't have a covering here. So I'm just on the west side of this house in the summer, so it gets pretty hot. I have my fan in there, plugged into the house, and this is my little pop-up screen tent. So I just move it around. It's a 12-foot diameter, so I can paint for quite a while in there before I have to even move it. And it really helps. There's some that I did yesterday that you guys watched. I'm back today to start again. And it helps in the evening because sometimes it's so hot until evening, and that's when the mosquitoes come out. A lot of foliage here, and I'm getting eaten alive by the mosquitoes. So I can stay out and stencil a lot longer if I have this little pop-up tent. So if you have one, think of using that for your stencil project. Hi, it's me again. I'm going to show you how to clean this stencil. I've now come to the end of the first use of it, and I have to stop and clean it. So really, if you can, it's better if you're having a big project like this to buy 2 stencils, because you do have to stop and clean this one. Now this is information for people who are using the porch paint, porch cement outside paint, because it has a lot of body to it, so it can build up on your stencil a lot faster than latex inside, you know, indoor paint. So last night I sprayed this with, as I mentioned before, the Crud Cutter latex paint remover. This is a latex-based paint. It's not an oil-based paint, but it does not wash off of this stencil. And last night I sprayed it outside, and as you see, it is pretty saturated. Don't just put a little bit on. This is what I did over the whole thing. Now, what I have found is this just helps it to just peel off. So I'm gonna have to sit here and peel this off. Otherwise, you don't have crisp lines when you're stenciling anymore. It starts getting fuzzy around the edges, you know, around here. It just, you're gonna have to fix more than it's better just to stop and clean it. So I sprayed it with my Cred Cutter latex paint remover. Let it set. You can put it in, the small ones I put in side of a garbage sack and just kind of smash it down. This one is a really big stencil for a big patio. So I cut a big garbage bag in half, and I have 2 of them, and I laid it down, sprayed it really well, and then I rolled it up. I covered it on each side, and then I just gently rolled it up. Do not crimp this. Do not fold the stencils. It will destroy them. You won't be able to use them. But the rolling, gently rolling it seems to be just fine. I let it sit for about a day, and that seems to work. And as I'm taking the paint off of it, when I unroll it, I just put it on this card table in front of the TV. It's gonna take you a while, so you might as well listen to the TV or a radio while you're doing it, because it just takes a little while. There's no way around it. But I don't unroll the whole thing. I leave it kind of moist as I'm peeling it off. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can use any kind of plastic scraper. I do have some little plastic scrapers, but actually this works just fine. It's an old Home Depot card or any kind of old credit card or store card that you might have that has that has an edge on it. That's plastic. Don't use anything metal. It'll cut into your vinyl stencil. So don't do that. But then you just start scraping it. It's gonna be hard to film this and do this at the same time, but you just scrape it loose and you see it's starting to come up. I'll do another video shortly and show you what it looks like as it's coming up. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's what it looks like when I'm scraping it up. You kind of just get it started with this. I'm doing this one-handed, but now some people asked, is that latex paint remover something you should wear gloves with? I don't, and I've done this for a while, and it doesn't seem to bother your skin or anything. You get it going and you see it just, the cement paint is it's like stretchy. So it just tends to like, sometimes you can even just use your fingers and just start, if you can get it going, just start pulling it off. So is it fun? No, really. But it's okay. It looks really clean at the end. But this is a really giant stencil, so it takes me a while. But the product on the patio, the design is so nice at the end that I really don't even care. But then you just have these little, you see, it's just like, you won't get this with the latex paint. You can just scrub that off this. So this is more labor intensive to do, use the outside cement paint. And it has to be like this to endure the weather. You won't get this with the latex inside paint. If you do stenciling inside, a flat latex is the best to use. And you can just spray this down or put some Dawn on it and just scrub it off with I use a sponge with the scrubber stuff on the back, and it washes right off. Right after you do it, just throw it outside and start scrubbing. This is a bigger project. But my little credit card thing works, and we'll get back to that and show it to you in the end when we start stenciling again. Okay, carry on. Okay, here I am back. Let's paint. As you see, my stencil got all clean. That took me 2 hours to clean that and to scrub it off afterwards. You see there's a little around the edges. That doesn't matter. I'll clean that off at the very end, but it won't affect the pattern, so that's what I'm concerned about. Now I'm going to show you how to line it up. I think it's fairly obvious. You find the pieces that were there, they're already painted, and you just lay it down right over top of them. So you match it up to the other one. You really need to take your time here and be really careful, because even that little squinch of a difference there, by the time you get down to the end and you've done this 8 more times, it'll be this much off. So take your time, get this lined up just perfectly. Make sure they're all good.
I always just stand back and look at it too, to see if it all looks right. It does here in the end. It looks just fine. Then I use tape. Any kind of tape will do. I just use this painter's tape, either the blue tape or the green frog tape, it doesn't matter. Just to hold it still. And you do want to tape it because it can move very easily, especially these big stencils. So I'm going back to painting. I'll make another video soon.
Hi, it's me. I'm back. Let's paint. As you see, Ed is coming along here, this project, this back patio. And we are at the last row right here. Sort of a little bit of a challenge. I should have really started from here and gone to there. That's a little easier. So do plan this out. If you're doing this, think about where you're ending up, where you're beginning. It doesn't really matter, except now I have this giant stencil. You see, now I'm in a corner. So it's a little harder. I have it taped down, you see, and all you have to do is really just keep matching where you were. Okay, this is something little tip I'm going to tell you, is that on this concrete patio, which is really rough, you can't really see it, but it's really a rough patio. Now you won't see all those little baubles because you just see this when you look at it. So your eye just sees the whole pattern. But it's hard to stencil on rough concrete. So you're going to have to fix whatever you do. Every time you have to just clean up the edges a little bit on some of them. So I found that switching over to my stencil brush, this is I think a 1.5 inch stencil brush, which is what a lot of people use rather than this roller, as I showed you in previous videos. The roller works great if it's just a smooth surface, but this kind of ended up working better. I ordered this from one of the stencil companies. They have a lot of different things. So here's what you do with the stencil brush. Okay, so you load it up with your paint, and you want to kind of work it. You want to kind of work it in like this. Now what you don't want is a big glob of paint on the end of this. Okay, so I have this paper towel, which is over a paper plate so it doesn't bleed through. And then you just kind of dab it off like this. Basically, it's loaded into the brush, but just kind of dab it off a little bit. You just don't want a glob of paint because it will go underneath all of that. So here's what it looks like. And this technique seemed to work on this rough paint, or this rough surface. Okay, so you just do this. You can pounce it like this. Now I've done this when I come to the edges, but not a whole stencil. You just kind of pounce it like this. It gives a lot more accurate design at the end. Once I get a little bit of the paint off, you can also do this motion, just kind of like this. Go back. Now, to be truthful, it takes a little bit longer than the roller, but I had to fix it less at the end, so it kind of was worth it to just use the brush and stencil with the brush on this concrete. Now, when you're swirling it like this, be careful. Keep it straight up and down, and just gently do this. Don't like really push on it like you would on a wall with a roller. Just gently sort of swirl it or pounce like this. And really make sure that thing is taped down really well. You see it's a mess in this corner, but I've got it all taped so it can't move. And then I'll go right down this row, and at the end, I'll show you what we get. Okay, back later. Okay, here I am back. Just finished the floor of the patio. Finished it last night, and it turned out really well. I put another coat on the border here, the dark gray, because it gets a little bit more wear and tear being on the outside along the grass. And now I'm going to just do this little added feature, which just looks really nice. I'm going to use some of these stencils that you will find in the stencil stores in the section where there's furniture stencils. So usually you would use these little tiny stencils like this to do shelving or the fronts of dressers or tops of dressers or some kind of border. But they work really great because putting a border around your stencil on a big patio is just so much easier than trying to go into this corner. And it gives it just a nice little finished look, so I tend to like to do that. So then I decided I'd go back and decorate a little bit more with this one. So we've moved to a 1-inch from Cutting Edge Stencils, 1-inch stencil brush. If you remember, you're gonna get like loaded up with your paint. I'm just using paper plates, so just throw them away at the end. And then I'm gonna offload some onto this. So we kind of have a dry brush, because if you get too much paint on here, you're gonna have a mess, especially with these little tiny stencils with the little dots. Do tape down your stencil. You think they won't move because it's small, but it will, and it has to be precisely on the line there, and if you want a straight line at the end. Okay, I'll be back and show you the finished product. Might take me a little bit, but I'll be back. Well, here it is. The back patio is finished, and I'll show you what it looks like. I'll try to post some before pictures. There's the steps. Get a little bit of a border around them, and you can see this is what the border looks like on the outside. And it really, there were some huge cracks in this, but it really covered them nicely. In certain light, you can see them a little bit, but then if you move, you really can't. This design is complex enough, yet you see it's a little bit large. So I would recommend that if you're doing concrete, which isn't smooth, to pick a pattern that isn't too intricate. Like some of them have very intricate details in them. Those are better left for inside the house, on a wall or someplace that's very smooth, maybe a tile floor. But you have to be able to repair and kind of fill in the little mistakes in this kind of stenciling project. So I would say, kind of think about the pattern you're choosing if you pick one. I like Cutting Edge Stencils and Stencils Lab. Those are both .com. You can find a lot of great ideas. So I hope you enjoyed this. There is one more section I'll show you when I get around to that, and that is I'm going to clear coat this with a product just to seal it. This house is in the Midwest, so we get some pretty extreme weather. It gets pretty cold in the winter and a lot of ice and snow. So I'm going to seal this with a clear sealer, and I'll be back to show you that final face. Thanks for watching.